Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rogue Wave podcast, the frequency for all things pop culture and the disruptors behind it. We talk comics, movies, TV, and pop culture, and the rogues who create it. Every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, Facebook.com/Rogue Wave Podcast. That's Rogue Wave without an E. And you can download our podcast immediately after the live stream. Go to RogueWavePodcast.com. That's W-A-V. To subscribe on Apple Podcasts, but we're also on Spotify, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Anchor. You can do all that stuff. We are also on the Rogue Matter podcast network. That was the big announcement we've been waiting to kind of let you guys know about. The beta launch of the website is now active. You can sign up to be one of the first to view Rogue Matter. What is Rogue Matter? We'll get into it over the next couple weeks, but it's an exciting new adventure. We didn't just rename our podcast to say we renamed it. Rogue Matter is so many amazing things, and I'll tell you all about it. But first, I'm going to introduce my co-host extraordinaire, Mr. Hassan Godwin. How you doing, sir?
We are in the midst of yet another Wednesday.
Yeah, but this is a special
this keeps
Wednesday.
Happening.
This is a special Wednesday.
They're always
get
special.
To actually tell people why we changed our name from Rogue Matter. From Secrets of the Sire to Rogue Wave. We've been doing this for a few episodes now, and it's really exciting. Basically, it's a new content website. It's called Rogue Matter. Go to roguematter.com. It's something. So, what's the definition of Rogue Matter? Rogue is something that's considered outside the norm or unexpected. Matter is something of substance. Our mission is unified in diversity, disruption, and embracing the rebellious spirit. Built our studio to provide programming and entertainment, shatters boundaries and colors outside the lines. Simply put, we look for stories and creators you can't find anywhere else. And I can't think of anyone more rogue than the two of us, Mr. Hassan Godwin. What do you think?
Yeah. I feel like a rogue every day.
There you go.
Every day.
There you go. Again, go to roguematter.com. Check out the new site. You have to sign up. There's a little landing page, gives you a little brief glimpse of everything. You sign up, and you'll get a password to go check out the beta site in the next couple of, I want to say, days to weeks. Our official launch will be coming later in the year, where everybody gets to look at it. But you, if you want to take advantage of this, go check it out. That's one order of business taken, cleared up. Two orders of business. I have a new Kickstarter out, which is amazing. It's coming out in September. Go to SireStudiosInc.com/Kickstarter, and it'll take you right to the Plan 59 from Outer Space Kickstarter launch, which is pretty cool. The Kickstarter will be launching in September, but you can sign up to follow it now, so you get notifications when it comes out. Again, that's SireStudiosInc.com/Kickstarter. They've tried 58 other plans based on the Ed Wood drama. This time they've got a plan to enslave and destroy humanity. And September 6th, you can find me and maybe Hassan, if he wants to join us, at CromCon. It's a virtual Comic-Con courtesy of Pops Van Sant and Comic Cast, and the comic-related Madness group on Facebook, which has been pretty awesome. They've been very warm and embracing of our podcast, and so we are able to do something for them. So, all right, that's it. I covered everything. Wait, one more order of business. Last week, Hassan, we were talking about New Mutants and how Rob Liefeld, New Mutants 87, was built off of G.I. Joe, a G.I. Joe image. So I failed to put it up in time. So here it is now in all of its glory. The image.
Yes. I was right, I tell you. No one listens to me. Yeah, what's kind of funny is I'm doing like you were doing. I don't know why. I think I was inspired because you've been talking lately about, because you're working on another project basically about the evolution of comic books, past comic books, the evolution of creation of special comics and stuff like that. And so it's kind of like a morphic field kind of situation where someone is, doing something, and so now you just find yourself, coasting into that, and then you start reading old issues and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And going over some of that stuff. Comics definitely have changed tremendously. Okay, so I don't think you can impress upon the audience, because you and I came up pretty much at the same time.
Right.
You can't really give justice to the Rob Liefeld, Todd McFarlane, Jim Lee era. You can't really.
Yep.
You can't talk about how influential that was. That's like that is the John Byrne and the Jack Kirby, all that stuff that came before us, and how people just became like, this is the way. You can see a comic book, read a comic book, this is the way. And you hear about that, and then you actually live one. You have a renaissance of your own. So like you get artists like Walt Simonson, you get artists like Rick Leonardi, one of my favorites. You get Mark Silvestri. Then you get like these rock star guys that kind of shoot to the forefront. Yeah. Like Todd McFarlane just completely changed the image of Spider-Man on the page. Jim Lee is unparalleled. He really, his influence is unparalleled. And Rob Liefeld I just remember like seeing his art so differently when I was younger. Like, it was such a...
Well, so here's the funny part. I had, not to interrupt, but I had a conversation with Fabian Nicieza, and it's going to be for a podcast that we do down the road for the Rogue Matter Podcast Network. And he basically kind of talked about how they knew Rob's art appeals to 10 to 14-year-old boys. Like, it just did. Like, there was something about it that you just view it differently.
That was in the era. I was in that age group.
So, and that's why, I mean, I still look at it and love it. But they say this. I think my co-host on that podcast is Victor Dandridge, and Victor was like, he's like, there's like they've actually shown, like, you show that art to like a 10 to 14-year-old boy, and the reaction is different than like a 25-year-old artist, man or woman. It just is. It just is different. And they,
the problem with being an artist, and you will know this full well. The problem with being an artist is that eventually everything starts to break down into technique, Right. And instead of looking at something, and determining how the imagery or whatever makes you feel, which is basically what we were able to do very easily as children.
Yes.
Like, oh, this is awesome. I love this. Right. Did you read that? That was fantastic. Now it's like, okay, he's a number 2 brush on this, or he's using a lot of cross hatching here, or he's using a zipatone.
Well, this muscle's not right.
Right.
Like, I didn't know muscles weren't right. That's the thing. When I was 12 years old, I didn't know muscles weren't right. Like, I look at some of the things, I'm like, that's not a real elbow because it shouldn't be there. But you know this as you get older, but not the visceral experience, because you don't know what you don't know. You only react. Everything's emotional.
And you have to try, I think, personally, or this is at least the journey I'm on, you have to try to get back to that. Like this is just evocative. I'm trying to make evocative work. I'm just trying. I'm not drawing for my heroes. I'm not drawing for the other artists out there. Yeah. I'm drawing to exalt these words that I've written on this page, and to evoke a feeling in the reader. But it's very difficult when you're an artist, to remember that. Yep. And to bring it back full circle, because we are going on this, this trip, I'm remembering what reading all that. I mean, every time I look at one of these things like Acts of Vengeance or whatever X-Men and stuff like that, I look at them now and like, these are really amazing pieces of work. But then I try to remember how I felt when I grabbed one of those things off a shelf, and and taking the bus home and trying to read them all on the way home.
Yep.
You can't really calculate that. So when you mentioned that last week and you showed that image, I just immediately remembered, this is, because I remember as a kid, I'm like, this is a riff off Roadblock. I remember that. And I thought it was like kind of a, it was kind of an homage to that. And then I actually found the issue, because back then you had to go digging things out. You couldn't just go on Google. And it's almost an exact copy of it. So that's always, without any mention of it. In comic books, for people who don't know, a lot of times you'll take an image from someone else. Sure. And then you'll put your name on it, and then you'll write after
Yes.
so and so. That's just that's a natural sign of respect.
Yep.
If you're gonna, because we steal all the time as artists, we're stealing stuff on a regular
it's an homage.
basis.
It's okay. I homaged I homaged your car.
Yeah.
Off the street.
Yes. I homaged your wife. So it's
homage my wife, please.
Yeah.
But
when that didn't happen, that made
that
me
was one of my worst
it.
jokes that you.
Yes, and I walked right away from it. I walked away from it. Come on,
you didn't. I saw your reaction. Your reaction. You're like, that is so bad that it's hilarious. I actually, the
joke wasn't funny.
Son, I have now crossed the line to genius by doing.
No, the joke wasn't funny. The fact that you told it and laughed yourself was what was funny about it. That's what's funny. When you laugh at your own jokes, that's funny.
Whatever works.
Fine. Anyway,
if I had to choke up on the bat to hit a home run, you choke up on the bat. It doesn't matter. The point is, out of the park. All right, we have a jam-packed show. We've got not one but two special guests. We got Tyler Mane, who you may know from as Sabertooth, celebrating the 20th anniversary of X-Men, alongside his unbelievably talented and wonderful wife, Renae Geerlings. They are a production company as well. They're a production powerhouse, making some awesome things. So we got them today. We are going to do a brief review of Project Power. We're going to talk about Jim Lee addressing DC Comics, the bloodbath at DC Comics that was, and talking about the line. But first, we call this the Rogue Rage. It's all the rage in the pop culture world, and because we have a jam-packed show, we're going to have to go through this kind of quickly. So I'm going to give you the top stories of the day, and you give me your 15-second soundbite.
Quick color commentary on it.
Yeah. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. finale reveals surprising Avengers Endgame connection. It's revealed that Fitz has been using the quantum realm to observe different timelines and alternate futures. Fans will obviously recognize the quantum realm from Avengers Endgame, which allowed the heroes to travel throughout time to assemble their own Infinity Gauntlet. The Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. team even traveled to it using their own quantum tunnel. Although when it comes to time travel, Back to the Future co-writer Bob Gale recently opened up about Endgame's reference to the classic trilogy. It wasn't the only tie to the wider universe, though, with Daisy Johnson heavily implying that she'd joined SWORD, which is another thing from the Joss Whedon run on X-Men that he introduced. Fans think the space-based agency appeared at the end of Spider-Man Far From Home, which revealed Nick Fury in space. So a couple things to digest real quick. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. somehow 8-9 seasons later, just quietly, that little engine that could show, having some sort of ties to the MCU, which it was supposed to, but then the MCU, when it debuted, it wasn't Marvel didn't have Disney Plus. They didn't have their own streaming service. TV worked a little differently. You had to go through like an ABC or a Netflix and things like that. And so it kind of got brushed aside. So congratulations to them for making it through and telling good stories. But then too, in the finale, connecting with the MCU again and implying that SWORD, which is the counterpart to S.H.I.E.L.D., which was introduced again during Joss Whedon's astonishing X-Men run, is a thing that we're going to see in movies. And what do you think?
I think anything that expands the medium is a good thing. It all depends on how they execute it, and how it works. The thing that interests me most is just to see if they could get that momentum back now after the COVID thing because Endgame is such a finale. It's such a workable finale to that whole era,
Yeah.
And I know they want to keep it going, and I want them to keep it going, and I want to see it, but it's hard not to bet against their ability to get that, because that entire run ended with the highest grossing movie of all time. That is probably the most successful, contemporary movie franchise of all time. So, and they show no signs of wanting to stop. Nobody's retired. Nobody's walking away. Some of the actors have moved on, but that's about it. The creative team is still in place. So whatever expands it, whatever makes it more interesting, I'm all for it.
Real quick.
And congratulations to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
I didn't stick with the show. I
lost after season 5 and the Ghost Rider season. I also did. I want to actually go back and watch it because I never.
So do I.
I didn't not enjoy it, but it never quite lived up to.
Yeah, I don't want to
what I thought it was
compliment
gonna be.
sandwich the movie, the television show, and say but, and give it a it's okay, but I don't want to do that. I don't know enough about it because I fell off. It's serialized television. It's hard to keep up with in our day and age. I'm very thrilled that they got. I mean, it's not a joke of a show. If they're
Right.
if they're past season 5, which they are,
Yes, right.
it's gone
8.
Substantially better than most contemporary super shows.
Yeah.
So it's up there with Game of Thrones territory at this point.
Well,
so congratulations to Agents this year.
Real quick final note on that. One of the things that I love about the introduction of Sword, and in general, is usually when a celebrity would come on and write a comic book. You had Kevin Smith, and Daredevil is actually an example, as a counterexample to the point I'm going to make. They kind of tend to come in and whatever they do, like J.J. Abrams just did a Spider-Man comic, and blink, you missed it, didn't do anything. It's not going to impact anything in any way, shape, or form. Kevin Smith writing Daredevil and Joss Whedon writing Astonishing X-Men actually introduced something new into the mix when they did it. And to be honest with you, Joss Whedon contributed more to the Marvel Universe versus Kevin Smith, who took away when he killed off Karen Page in the comics. But both actually contributed and had a lasting impact. Joss Whedon accomplished something that is more difficult. It's easier to come in and kill somebody to make an impact than it is to actually add to it. And all of a sudden, he added the concept of Sword to the Marvel Universe, which had never been around before, but makes logical sense. SHIELD is the homeland defense. Sword is the intergalactic defense. And they kind of both work under the government, and so awesome, and kudos to that. All right, next story. Disney Plus whips up a new Lego Star Wars holiday special. It's going to pay homage. See, get that word again. To the Star Wars holiday special.
Those dirty thieves.
Homage. The infamous CBS holiday special that aired November 17th, 1978, a full year before I was born. The kitschy live-action 1970 special saw Chewbacca, co-pilot of the Millennium Falcon, attempting to return home so he could celebrate the traditions of Life Day with his family. As Chewie and Han Solo attempted to evade Imperial forces, a series of skits and musical numbers showed Chewie's family preparing for the festivities. Released between Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back, the holiday special is infamous for being considered non-canonical. Canonical, yes. By George Lucas. Nevertheless, the special was responsible for introducing Boba Fett, the titular Mandalorian who launched 1 million action figures and eventually the Mandalorian.
Oh yeah, and the completely unhinged imagination of one young Mr. Hassan Godwin. I did my admiration and love of Boba Fett was unparalleled until I met girls. But then I don't know, maybe
good days, bad days at that point, right?
Yes,
it goes back and forth.
There's never been a bad day with Boba Fett, though. I will say
that's my point, right? It's just never as good. But it's never as bad. See,
no.
Exactly. That actually is that analogy could be used in like anything, like
it can,
like a good pizza, At its best, girls are better than a good pizza. If you're girls,
pizza is always.
But pizza's always solid, man. You can never go wrong. There's never a bad pizza. Even bad pizza is not a bad pizza.
Even bad pizza is good. Bad pizza is good.
So we've diverged. I'll say this: my son, his favorite movies right now are the Lego movies. He loves the Lego Batman movie. He'll be 5 in February. Nothing could be better than coming up with something cheesy. Like if they tried to redo the Christmas special using like real actors and stuff, even if it was an homage and even if it was done tongue in cheek, I can't imagine it being successful. Doing it as a Lego, I think is exactly the way to go. It is going to be unbelievably amazing.
I was just about to say, if they do another Christmas special, right, and they just lean into it, even if they did the actors, now the Lego thing is kind of a safeguard, right? But you got to admire them for even just going back into that, Mm-hmm. Like Disney's like, we don't care. We're doing it. We want a Christmas special. We're having a Christmas special. So, I mean, yeah, we'll see. Time will tell, but you got to admire them even for opening that book.
Yeah.
Because it's a dangerous book. It really is.
And finally, Jamie Foxx still wants to star in Todd McFarlane's Spawn film coming eventually. Jamie Foxx has stated he still wants to star in the upcoming Spawn film from Blumhouse Productions. The reboot was first announced at 2017 San Diego Comic-Con. Not long after, it was revealed that Jeremy Renner would play Twitch, with Jamie Foxx playing the titular anti-hero. Unfortunately, news for the film is now hard to come by, with the aspiring director, which is McFarlane, blaming the delays and creative differences. He has, however, teased that big talent is being added to the upcoming film, but did not divulge who this would be. Despite all the delays, Jamie Foxx is still up for playing Al Simmons. Speaking to Yahoo, Jamie Foxx talked about Todd McFarlane's film in the hopes that he can still get the film moving, or he'd still be in it when it gets moving. I surprised McFarlane. I said, bro, I know that one day you will do this movie. I hope you'll keep me in mind. What Black Panther did was let us know it's necessary and it's the time, and Spawn is just an interesting character in and of itself. The heads that are being put together to bring you something special, look out. This is something, again, that I laugh at the generation on social media today when they're like, we've never had this and we've never had that. And it's like, one of the great examples of this never, having kind of thing is that in the 90s, especially the 90s, we had a lot of groundbreaking characters, Spawn being one of them. Spawn was actually, having an African-American lead. I know in the Spawn documentary, Larry Fitzgerald is like, yeah, he had an African-American lead. I'd never seen that before. And that's why I love that character. I love that film. He named Al Simmons' wife after his own wife, but again, this was an African-American family, an African-American lead. And I'll admit, even, again, being, when did it come out? 91. So I was 12 years old, maybe 11, 12 years old. I turned the page. I go, oh, kind of surprised. It didn't bother me. It didn't, it's not the internet where I'm like, they're trying to politicize my comics. No, I was like, oh, it's kind of different. Cool. All right. I didn't expect that from Todd McFarlane, who's a white guy. Even an 11-year-old brain can kind of process that, having seen pictures of him and having him done stuff for Spider-Man. But it was never like a big deterrent. Meanwhile, on the flip side, for African-American children or people growing up who might have watched the Spawn TV series on HBO, the cartoon series, or saw the movie or read the comic, it's a big deal. There's no reason it shouldn't happen now. Now is definitely the time. But I love that. But again, I want to make point that creators were doing stuff that broke boundaries 30 years ago.
They've been doing stuff that broke boundaries since the beginning of the medium.
Right.
Comic books in themselves were boundary breakers. Just the idea of having a serial or serious comic books.
Right.
Or comic books for kids, comic books for adults, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So yeah, that's why I don't understand this current era where everything new that's tried is kind of a threat to the tradition of whatever. I mean,
right.
and we
right, and you know what?
We very purposely don't take any sides on that.
I'll be bipartisan. I'll give you both sides, and I think they're both ludicrous. One, comics are not supposed to be political. Well, they've always been political. They've always tried to introduce stuff. They've always tried to be groundbreaking. On the flip side, we've never had this happen before. Well, no, then you don't know your history. Because that whammy talk is very bad. That's Hollywood mogul talk. Right.
This is why you should pay attention to it, because it's happening in this newest now.
We have a female lead in a movie, and I'm like, did you not watch Aliens? Did you not watch Terminator?
Yeah.
But meanwhile, it's like you should. Comics never used to have a political agenda. Go reread those early '90s comics. They didn't have an agenda. They discussed politics though, in a metaphor.
We've had this discussion before, though. That's the consternation that we're always running into with that stuff is the marketing of it.
Right.
You got these marketing execs who are not in the creative aspect of things. They're not even the producers of most of these films. They're the firm that is hired to boost, like Wonder Woman, and they're like, and the most rudimentary thing to highlight is that, well, she's a female superhero, and that's not common, so we'll just play that angle. And, it works because that movie was successful, but it ruffles a lot of feathers on the way.
Right now, because I think, again, we're having a generation of kids growing up with that have more power than they ever did because of phones. And I say kids, I don't mean 5-year-olds. I mean like anyone under 30, has more power because their opinion, whether it's the actual truth or not, and I don't mean that in a sense of that what they're saying is not real or not. I'm saying whether or not
they can weigh in immediately. They could just be part of the discussion instantaneously.
Right, and this instant gratification, instant feedback, and again, whether or not the people are actually real that are saying this, but the way social media works, they, this one giant opinion that has now kind of split into two giant opinions, gives them power that they never had before, and marketing companies are now utilizing it to take advantage of your opinion and things that you are either so traditionally behind or woke behind that you are actually being manipulated by your own opinion, which we
can't even really discuss this because we're never going to be able to dedicate enough time to going over it. It really is. I'm not talking about like it's not a valid discussion.
No, I know.
It's just so it's so far reaching. It's so all encompassing that But I do not disagree with you. I think maybe you and I both have, and we've discussed it before. We have differing ideas of where it comes from, or what the real toxic aspect of it is.
Right.
But we do agree, at least in the fact that we are being manipulated. It is a manipulative aspect, and it's not the fault of the creators or it's not Wonder Woman's fault that she was, that she was made, the focus of a potentially toxic campaign.
What's even funnier though? I would actually go. It wasn't necessarily even Wonder Woman. It was Captain Marvel, because she's the real litmus test of a character that never traditionally did very well in sales. Like Wonder Woman, at least, is iconic. And has that iconic stature.
You can't beat that. Yeah, you can't.
It's tough.
You can't argue against that.
Yeah, but Captain Marvel was one where we started to get into, and it's not just Captain Marvel. I mean, you can pick any issue. You can go to the Comicsgate issue. You can go to the Gamergate issue. You can go into movies and with diversity cast, Black Panther. I mean, you can pick an issue, and you can see what the conversations are on social media and how they fall into two camps no matter what. And again, Spawn is a great reminder that, again, both those arguments in and of itself, like you said, whammy talk is kind of, any absolutism here is misplaced at best. All right.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about Jamie Foxx when we come back. He's got a new movie out. It's streaming on Netflix. It's called Project Power. Kind of falls into our wheelhouse. What if you could get superpowers by taking a pill? Would you do it? It'd be nice if the movie actually answered that question, rather than, well, we'll get into it when we come back.
Welcome to Button Stash, the show about the best mustaches in gaming.
Casey, it's Button Smash. It's the new gaming podcast from the Rogue Matter Network. I don't know where you got mustaches from.
Well, I'm not shaving. But we will talk about gaming news, reviews, inside scoops, and retrospectives.
Join us live on twitch.tv/WeAreRogueMatter on Thursday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern, or download our episodes wherever you listen to your podcast.
But please, Casey, shave.
Welcome back to the Rogue Wave podcast, talking comics, movies, TV, and pop culture every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, part of the Rogue Matter podcast network. That was our cool announcement in the first segment, which is pretty awesome. But you can check us out every weeknight, every Wednesday night, facebook.com/Rogue Wave podcast. Go to Rogue Wave podcast without the E.com to subscribe, and check out roguematter.com. Be one of the first to jump on. It's a brand new digital content company. It's going to be really exciting. We're really excited to be part of it. And yeah, that's it. All right. Netflix released a brand new action-packed blockbuster starring Jamie Foxx called Project Power. Gives you superpowers in a pill. Written by Mattson Tomlin and directed by Henry Joost and Ariel Schulman. Project Power is a smart and entertaining action-packed sci-fi film. According to this write-up, that's more than what it seems. When we think of the word power, we tend to associate it with physical strength. In New Orleans, power is the name of a mysterious new street drug that can either give those who take it unmatched strength or kill them instantly after ingestion. It stars Jamie Foxx and Joseph Gordon-Levitt, along with Dominique Fishback. that write-up is actually really, really great. I wish the film was anywhere near that write-up or complex as that write-up was. Let's do this. Let's look at the state of Netflix blockbusters for a second, right? Okay, so we had Old Guard that came out last month. Very similar, has Charlize Theron and it has Jamie Foxx in this particular film. So Charlize Theron was in Old Guard and Jamie Foxx was in Project Power. If you were to take those two actors away from this film, this is no greater than a made-for-cable, late-night, 2 a.m. I don't want to say Cinemax, but that's where these kind of movies would end up. But it's not a soft porn film, so I don't want people to confuse that. It's not a Skinemax 2 a.m. film. It's a, it's a USA. Showtime or like what's it doing on at 2 a.m. And maybe you have insomnia and you'll be entertained by it. But take those two actors out, and I'm saying, look, the actors are in it, right? But it's very these films are so similar, right? Or at least for me, they take a really cool concept, spend about 2 minutes on the cool concept, and the rest of it is like, what can we do? How much action can we throw in? How much cool like stunt choreography can we throw in, and cool like angles so that it looks like a video game and it's hot and it's young and it's fresh. And it's basically, that's it. Basically the same movie to me.
It does have a lot of action-y tropes and stuff in it. It's it brushes on some brilliance, and then it gives you a really interesting concept. It's got a great prop. The pills are great props, like the way they look or whatever. But pretty much as soon as you see the pills and you understand what the pills are for, that's kind of when they drop the pills, Like they don't really emphasize on the pills. I think we talked off camera. We were talking about like they don't emphasize how the pills were developed. They don't even spend what the process is.
Seconds. Yeah, they don't spend 2 seconds on how they're developed, except to show us like animals, and they're like, "Look, animals can do this, so we figured it out." And so I don't understand. Like the most pivotal scene in the movie, right, was probably or the most standout scene in the movie was probably when that punk rocker looking dude brought his girlfriend into the club, and she takes the pill and she's in the center of this like fishbowl, and they get to watch.
Which makes her seem really stupid also. That some of that stuff is so implausible. Here, please step into this isolated cage and take this experimental drug.
Right.
We just want to see what's going to happen.
Right.
While everybody stands around gawking with champagne. Like,
and they knew that if she turned to ice, that she would, we have to raise the temperature in there because she can't handle it. So what animal, first of all, can like basically have the powers of Iceman and freeze themselves to the point, but then also that their body can't handle it? Like,
penguins,
I'm not sure.
Maybe, I don't know.
but that's the whole thing. Like this movie, again, it's like Old Guard, and again, Old Guard is actually vastly superior to this film. Let me put that out there, right? But Old Guard does the same thing. It's like, what if you're immortal, and what are the pains of being immortal, and what are the conflicts? What if you could grow old with someone, but who's also immortal? But then meanwhile, what if you're watching this the whole time and just being jealous the whole time, right? I mean, there's all these like, deeply interesting things that you can do with the movie, right? Or the concept, or in the villain's case, what if you're trying to crack the immortality code because your wife died? Totally makes sense. Here, I know a lot of people are kind of like aping on it because it's like, well, wasn't that a DC comic or wasn't that an X-Men comic? Look, they don't get to corner the market on what would you give up for power? Would you give up, would you take the risk, the Russian roulette of you could either die or you could go fly for 5 minutes? That's not a unique concept.
They don't even really emphasize that.
But they don't, they don't do anything with it.
That's mentioned.
That's the log line.
And then one guy, I think they show one guy take a pill.
Yeah.
He explodes. And then they just, that's all you get on that. That's all the information that you get.
Is it addicting? Like, is it some sort of like, because the one guy, he's like basically running for his life from Jamie Foxx, and he's like, well, I'm just going to take 5 of these now because it's over.
Yeah.
And,
and it turns out to be unwise.
Yeah.
And then also, you get superpowers. A normal person is chasing you, have these superpowers.
Right.
And yet, they show Jamie Foxx beat the guy.
Right.
And then he ODs on the. You would think that if this is augmentation and this is a problem, and that the cops are having issues because this is a problem, then you wouldn't. The first thing you show wouldn't be a normal guy who's not even a cop,
right,
to be able to defeat one of these guys. You know. So then you're like, well, okay, so really, what's the problem? You just get 5 cops instead of 2, you know, for each case. And you got budgetary issues, you got manpower issues, but you really don't have a problem with this particular drug. So, I know.
No, they wanted to show what the Human Torch could look like in a Fantastic Four movie. They're like, we need to.
But we've seen it.
We need
you
to
know, it's not.
But not this guy's vision of it. You know.
Yeah, I'm gonna be controversial and say this: powers are not interesting.
Right.
Nobody's interested in powers. You can't really define what Captain America's powers are. You know.
Right.
You can't really define what Thor's powers are. I mean, he can fly, he can shoot electricity. Is that the extent of it? Is it? So, I mean, and Iron Man doesn't have a power. He's got a suit. These characters are seriously interesting to us because in spite of the powers, they are characters. They have personalities. Right. They have wants. So that whenever Captain America does beat the crap out of somebody, because if you honestly think about Captain America, he's a guy who solves all of his problems with his fists.
Right.
He's not a deep thinker. He's not a Batman. He's not a detective. Right. But the reason why we don't lump him into some kind of bouncer, some glorified bouncer, is because he's got a character.
Right.
Because we know what he wants, what he doesn't want. He's got a pathology. He's got his a lost love. He's got a lot of things that we invest in. Powers in and of themselves are visually pleasing, but they're not in any way interesting enough for you to sustain watching a 2.5-hour movie or a 10-hour television show.
Right. Even if the powers give you a struggle of some kind, like an internal struggle, like either like Rogue's power, right? Like she can't love anybody because she can't touch someone. The conflict is not in the power. The power is just the conduit for the conflict, right? And so if there is none, it does nothing. The other thing this movie fails to do to me, and I don't understand. Again, I don't want to be super spoilery. We usually wait for a week to do the super spoilery stuff, but believe you me, we're not spending another week on this movie. Like, unless it's to talk about the fact that Netflix is not doing a sequel, or
unless it's to talk about the fact that we're not spending another week talking about
right, exactly, it. Right. This is not like Umbrella Academy that actually was A, very good, but also B, was culturally picked up on. So we did 2 weeks, which was great. This is like, they really don't give you any explanations here. And I'm not someone that needs a vast amount of explanations, but besides not going into the fact of the powers, and again, super spoiler if you haven't seen it, I'm trying to figure out a way to do this without spoiling it. I don't think it's going to happen, but Jamie Foxx's daughter is the key to all of this. I think you said it off camera to me once. You're like, she was the key to cracking the code of how this works. And again, they showed a couple animals on screen, and somehow that was enough to build a designer drug. And somehow it's a designer drug market. Again, I don't know. Because everyone's going to sell it to some shady government, of course. But how would you create 5-minute super soldiers that have any effect in it? All right. Anyway, back to my original point. See, so many things that bother me. Turns out she's the key to all this. Jamie Foxx's daughter is the key to all this, which is why he's after her, which is why she got kidnapped in the first place. There is no mention as to how she's the key, why she's the key. Maybe Jamie Foxx. I mean, you could do something just as simple as, man, I knew I shouldn't have worked at a nuclear power plant when you were a kid. Because now you're a mutant.
Yeah.
No.
Something, just anything. When you remember when you were bitten by the radioactive, slug, and then, no, there's nothing.
Not even that. It's just like she just is, and you're like,
we're supposed to look at it and go, oh man, this is really interesting. Oh yeah, and Jamie Foxx is in it, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt is in it. That legitimizes the whole thing. It makes it really good. Which,
again, their performances are excellent within the context of the movie. I'm not talking that their performances are legendary in the annals of acting. I'm just saying that they do a really good job. Joseph Gordon-Levitt has that great scene with the mom where he, somehow comes in with the towel on, and at that point my suspension of disbelief has gone out the window anyway. So it was just fun to see him do that, and again, without Jamie Foxx, anchoring this thing is unwatchable. But yeah, no, it's
I don't know if I agree with it. It's unwatchable, but
right.
I agree. It's unremarkable. It's unremarkable.
Okay. That's a much yes, because ultimately I give it like a C plus B minus. It's not like I give it an F or anything like that. It's basically a, it's a upper C, lower B type of movie. So yes, it's not unwatchable. I don't mean to be that harsh about it. I think my harshest criticisms come in the fact that there's so much potential that was wasted. Old Guard were guaranteed a sequel because they pretty much guaranteed a sequel with the ending of it. So maybe they'll, rebound in the second movie and really get into the crux of the interesting things about the concept that they failed to get into. And
maybe
if this has a sequel, maybe they'll get into more of it. But this movie left me with no desire whatsoever for a sequel. And not just because they didn't end in a cliffhanger, but because there is just no desire for maybe. Look, actually, I take that back. As soon as the credits rolled, I turned it off. So there might be an extra scene on it. I'll look this up, but there might be an extra scene on it. But I didn't even bother to stick around. They drove away. I'm like, cool. I'm like, I need to go to bed now.
So meh for you.
I give it, so yay, nay, or meh. I give it a nay with a meh on top of it. Or meh with a nay on top of it. I think that's the way I got to do it. A meh with a nay on top of it because of squandered potential.
How does that even work in your grading system? How does
I think my meh is indifference to it, but I'm angry that I'm indifferent to it. So I get the nay is on top of the meh.
All right, fair enough.
What's your?
I'm a meh.
Yeah,
it's meh.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm not angry. Whatever. Okay, fine. But I probably won't be going back. No. Like there won't be a second viewing.
No, and look, the state of Netflix blockbusters right now. This movie is only even being reviewed by us because there's nothing else out there. Netflix they've cornered the market. They've managed to
corner the market on nothing.
Right. they are the happy the lucky benefactors of timing.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
All right. Fair enough.
When we come back, we are thrilled to be joined by Sabertooth himself, Mr. Tyler Mane, with his unbelievably talented wife, Renae Geerlings, former editor-in-chief of Top Cow, movie producer, actress. What a combination coming up next. With a cape. No, anything. Yeah. Cape is always crazy. Cape is always crazy. Look, there are clowns walking the streets right now.
Right now.
There is no one dressed in a cape. Rogue Wave Podcast, the frequency for all things pop culture and the disruptors behind it. Streaming every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern on Facebook.com/Rogue Wave Podcast and available immediately following the live stream wherever major podcasts can be found. Welcome back to the Rogue Wave Podcast, the frequency for all things pop culture and the disruptors behind it. We are privileged to be joined by two of the best in the business. We have Mr. Tyler Mane and Miss Renae Geerlings. How are you guys doing?
Doing very well, thank you.
People obviously know both of you guys in the comic book and the movie and TV business. Tyler, most notably for playing Sabertooth in the X-Men films, and Renae for being one of the first editor-in-chiefs of all time at Top Cow, before going into acting as well, and producing. And you guys are still super active in that world. Let's start with let's start with how you guys met, because that's a good story.
Shall we do this like a quiz? Shall this?
Oh yeah.
I think I'm going to fail.
And we'll play the love connection game. Let's you guys sequester into your own rooms, and we'll come out with that.
I know it was in 2000 at the Wizard World convention.
Yep.
In Chicago, yes.
In Chicago. First time we saw each other, I was walking across the floor, and I saw this beautiful lady, and I said, "Hey, I've got to meet her."
I think you told Hassan because he was working your security detail during that show.
I'll fit myself in there. That's fantastic.
Why not? Right? Why not? Just
yes, it worked for me perfectly. In fact, it was me who said you should go talk to her.
This is all because of you. Thanks.
No problem.
It's funny you mentioned that because I actually do have like convention romance stories where I've introduced people and they end up having these successful marriages and relationships. So that's it's kind of a magical thing to meet at a convention. But continue. So you had to meet her at Wizard World Chicago. How did it go? Obviously, it went well.
Well, I think I'm going to hand it over to her now.
A wise man.
I can see out of the corner of my eye. She's like,
out of my ears.
No, that ain't what happened. So
now we know how Tyler thinks it happened. Renae, how did it actually happen?
Let's remember it that way. It's because in 2000, we were at the Wizard World party, the main party at the hotel's pool. They had this big party, and I had just come in from the Witchblade premiere. They premiered it in Chicago. I walked in. I was a tall girl at a comic book con, and there was this very tall guy standing at the bar. So I thought, I got you. I got this. I walk over and I proceed to make the biggest fool of myself. I ask him what his name is. I think he said John Wayne in the loud bar, and I tell him that he can't have that because that's taken. And he looks at me like I'm an idiot, and he said, "What?" I said, "What?" He said, Tyler Maine. And I said, "Oh, what do you do?" All the boys around me like punched me, and they were like, "Dude, he was Sabertooth." And then I was so embarrassed, I ran. To the other side of the bar, and I was like, "Oh, you guys, I made such a fool of myself." That guy, and they're like, "Sabertooth." I was like, that's the guy.
And 20 years later, you're on our podcast.
That catch up with her again. Yeah.
So back in 2000, Tyler, you were doing the convention circuit because X-Men was debuting. Take us back to getting the role. And I know it was a kind of a unique story in it itself, just to even have the role of Sabertooth.
Yeah, they were wanting my. I used to wrestle professionally, and they wanted my tag partner, Kevin Nash, and then they asked if I wanted to do stunts, and they said, "How are you with high falls?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know about that, but And then for some reason, it didn't work out with Kevin, and I was going in to see Bryan Singer. And I went and got the fake teeth and got all the comic books. I went into the, in the Valley, there's the comic book store.
Mm-hmm.
And they have like the rows of comics. And I walked in there like a complete dumbass. I go, "Do you got any X-Men comic books?" And he goes, "Yeah." Okay. Do you got any with Sabertooth? He goes, "Yeah, these two guys." I'm like, "Okay, can you just help me pick some good stuff because I'm getting it for my nephew?"
And
subterfuge.
Goes, "Okay."
Yeah.
And then
so
that's how I got my research for it. And I started reading, and I go, "Wow, I gotta try and do something to get this role, right?" So I went down to Friends. I think it was a Friends. The beauty shop or whatever, and I got the fake teeth, and I got and I put the teeth in, and then, I had the long blonde hair at the time, and I walked in to this office and I knock on the door, and I go, "I'm here to see Mr. Singer," and this kid was sitting on the couch. He goes, "Just a minute." Oh my God, I'm standing there like a stupid idiot with his teeth in, and he just keeps typing for about a minute. I'm standing there going, "Okay, this is really awkward. Where's the guy I need to see? I got to get these teeth out." He looks up. He goes, "I'm Bryan Singer." "Holy shit, you're Sabertooth." And then My audition was literally, he jumped up there was a glass table there, and he goes, choke me. So I'm choking. That's my audition. And I got the role. I was like, that was about the most weirdest audition I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
But then I ended up getting the role. So next time you need to get a role, if you're an actor, go buy teeth.
What can you tell us about filming and the experience of being in an X-Men movie, which then leads to doing the comic convention circuit, which had to be a totally different experience for you?
Yeah. You know, we were filming. They had this set built in the soundstage. It was like a 30-foot Statue of Liberty head. I mean, you walk in and you see this in this huge soundstage, and you go, "Wow, this is going to be big."
Yeah.
You know? And then when you find out that you're going to be fighting on top of that, you're like, "Wow, this is going to be incredibly crazy." You know?
Yeah.
But you know, it was all safe. We were all harnessed in and everything, and the fight scene with Hugh on the top of that Statue of Liberty was just amazing, and it was so fun to do, you know, and just working with everybody, the whole cast was fantastic, you know. And I remember Ian gave me some of the best acting advice. He goes, "Less is more, my dear boy, less is more." And make sure you don't have boogers. Screen. So that's the best acting advice I got from Sir Ian McKellen.
Oh, amazing.
One of the things that I've picked up over the years from hearing the stories about X-Men is that, and even for me coming in afterward, I didn't meet Tyler till after X-Men was already a success, right? So it was already, the filming was already in the rearview mirror for everybody, and it was already huge. But the fun thing listening to the stories that I hear from people talking is that when they were filming this movie, they were all just a really young group of people.
Yeah.
Doing something that they didn't know if this was going to hit or
well,
not.
that's the thing that's interesting. And that was my next question actually for you, Renae, because you were on the inside of the industry. And we were coming off of like Batman and Robin, which was a debacle, and you had Blade, but they made it very known to not make it known that it was based off a comic book, really, you know, like in order to get made, it was like, you know, don't be a comic book. Like when you
talk about this part of it.
What's that?
We don't talk about that part of it.
Yeah, we don't use the C word.
Yeah, exactly, right. So, I mean, talk to me just about like the transition of where we are now versus when X-Men came out. I mean, you were in the inside. I mean, it's amazing.
I mean, at the time, comic books were really at their pinnacle, which is kind of ironic that that would be the perception at that point. Because when I started at Top Cow in 1997, the guys I was working with were basically rock stars.
Yeah.
And, I was actually supposed to go to the premiere of X-Men, the one that happened in Westwood, which we would have met had I gone to that. But I was an editor, and all of my artists, we all had tickets as a company, they all handed me their artwork in the days when art needed to be scanned in and out or put on a drive and FedExed, right? They all handed me their artwork as we were supposed to leave. So I have the responsibility of, if I go to this movie, I lose every single one of these books an extra day on production, and most of them are late. So it's a little bit of a Cinderella story, I think. So I didn't get to go to the ball that night. But it was such a huge thing in the industry, and that was kind of the pivot where all of a sudden the eyes in the entertainment world started to look toward all of the other properties.
Yeah.
Which was really great for comic books because, you know, they kind of hit that bubble. I think Image created a bit of a bubble.
Yeah.
And so it's really sustained comic books as a medium.
Yeah, and you were still with Top Cow when Witchblade, I think, came out, correct?
I was.
Yeah.
That was the premiere. The TV premiere happened the night that I met him in Chicago. So
yeah.
So that was fun.
Oh, it was even earlier. It was in 2000. I thought it was like
2000 that it premiered.
Wow. I thought for some reason 05 was in my head, but you're right. Actually, it was even earlier than that. Wow. So I mean, So both of you guys have now stayed within this, you know, comic book, Comic-Con, pop culture world. You have a production company now. Before we get into that, talk to me about, again, doing conventions now versus like when you guys had first met and first doing those conventions back then. I mean, you had kind of said, you were the tall girl in the room. You were probably the only girl in the room, and people don't even realize that. Like that, it's so different now.
There were admittedly in my time, that's a bit of an overstatement. There were a lot of women who were involved in comics, but the demographic has definitely shifted over the last 2 decades. Oh God, that hurt to say. I remember somebody.
Vintage. It's vintage. Don't worry.
That's the first, few years.
In the
like
last
1 or 2
few years.
years.
No, I mean,
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's awesome, and I love that. But the convention world, for those of us old timers, also hurts to say. The conventions really shifted at some point in the aughts.
Yeah.
When the studios glommed onto things like X-Men and glommed onto the realization that Comic-Con was a huge thing.
Mm-hmm.
The entire convention world shifted. It went from being a bunch of comic book professionals with the odd, TV show cast or the odd, like maybe they were involved in a comic book, and so we got to have, real big celebrities come down. That was a big deal.
Yeah.
Went from being the high point to being the expected.
Yeah.
And the entire economy of comic book convention shifted because at the time I started, it was really the vendors were making tons of money because the vendors would do a deal with DC or Marvel. The vendor would get the limited run comic book.
Yeah.
And we would have all of the artists there to sign that limited run comic book. So people would run to the vendors to get the comic and then run to our booths to have the artists sign them. And that was kind of how that economy worked. When Warner Brothers, Universal, Fox, Paramount started bringing all their big stars and giving everything away for free, everything kind of shifted.
Yeah.
The publishers went, wait, maybe we'll keep the limited runs so that we have something to vend.
Yeah.
Yeah. And everything kind of shifted. And, I think it was huge for a while. I think it was great. I think it is still great on a lot of levels. If you want to go somewhere and be just surrounded and saturated by pop culture and all of the things that are amazing. But I do feel like at some point it probably hit the peak of that too, because it just becomes so hard to sustain.
It's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting because we, before COVID, we were all talking, fellow creators and stuff, and we were kind of just saying, like at some point this bubble has to burst. We haven't figured, again, COVID kind of throws a monkey wrench in everything, right? So we don't know what's, we can't really trend off of this year, obviously. But it just kept getting, like, I remember New York Comic Con in 2016 or 2015, it was like, holy cow, like I just made a lot of money, and it's not your typical comic book fan. It's like people that are coming for art and people are discovering the stuff for the first time. And that just kept increasing incrementally. And so it's one of those things where I find it, I just, again, being an old timer,
it's okay. We can all commiserate.
Where it was, when Hassan and I were at Wizard versus where it is now. I mean, it's just it's amazing. Tyler, I mean, are your interactions any different with fans?
No, I mean they're pretty much the same. But like another thing to add to that too is back in the day there were so few. There's specific conventions.
Mm-hmm.
Now every weekend there is something going on somewhere
Yeah.
around the world.
Yeah.
I mean. I went from, doing the specific ones like Wizard World, Comic Cons, to going all over the world now, to meet the fans. And it's just a great opportunity to get out there and to see the fans and give something back to them, to have that interaction with them. Because one thing I learned in the wrestling is without the fans, I don't have a job, you know? So, and it's just, it's a great way to give back.
No, it's amazing. So now, Renae, you were with Top Cow through the 2000s. Then you left, and you went into acting, and the two of you guys starred in Halloween 2. How was that experience?
I wouldn't say I starred, but I did make the trailer, so I was pretty excited about that.
No, you're this is we are hyping you up big time here.
Win. Yeah.
This story, if she tells the one that I'm thinking about, is a point of contention.
All of our stories.
Also,
then tell that one, please.
Yeah. Go ahead. Tell the one.
Yes.
Real quick,
Please have this moment publicly.
Our rule on the show is we don't get anybody fired and we don't break up marriages. So as long as one of those two things doesn't happen, we're good.
You'll never break up the marriage, but
this is what we do all day, every day. This is as romantic as it gets with the mains. What? You said what? What? You're so wrong.
No, it's something about lines. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a good one.
Harsh though, like.
This is harsh. Go ahead. Lay it on. Lay it on. See if they.
Well, so Rob cast me as and Monica Mickelson cast me as Deputy Gwyn, which was a fairly small role.
Yeah. And why did they do that?
I don't know.
Good actor.
And put in a good word. Yeah.
Okay, fine. Nepotism at its best. Let's just go with.
All right.
I knew people. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I show up on set. I am actually in the film I'm in the first scene. My ponytail flashes by. The first day on set, they actually asked me to pick my husband up in these really tight police pants on the stretcher. And I have this image of, I swear to you, I thought when I squatted down in those lovely pants that I was going to be like a blooper like that. First scene. Then I tell Sheriff Brackett that the phone call came from his house.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the very end of the movie, I am in the final shootout with Tyler. So when I got cast as Deputy Gwyn, I asked Rob very excitedly, so how do I die? And he said, you actually live.
Oh.
And I was fairly disappointed, right? Like, what does that mean? And he said, but you get to shoot your husband. And I said, I'm in.
Own it.
Yeah,
So
right.
the scene that I shot, that's just a bad time. So the scene that I shot, after I was done, I was, walking. I think I was wrapped that night. No, I wasn't wrapped that night, but I was walking, and Rob walks up behind me to come down the hall, and he's like, you did a great job. You go home and you tell that husband of yours you acted him off the screen. And I said, well, I don't know if I'll tell him that, but I'm sure going to let him know that in one day I had more lines in this franchise than he had in 2 movies. Rob was like, oh.
Ooh.
Yeah, that hurt.
Brutal.
But then I proceeded to say, okay, let's compare paychecks.
That's true.
Mm-hmm. There we go. That's where.
Hassan, I'm not at all uncomfortable. Are you uncomfortable?
No, not at all. Everything is good. Everything's good.
That's one of those things where you're at the dinner party. You're like, okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
look at this silverware. Isn't this beautiful silverware?
Look at the time. No,
The patterns on these plates, they're amazing.
No, we're only kidding. So, Tyler, you've also, so now you've acted in horror, you've acted in action, comic book action even, to go even greater, but you also done comedy. What's your favorite type of role to take on?
Well, I like them all, for different reasons. I love doing the comedy. I really love doing the action stuff. Netflix is doing Jupiter's Legacy, which I'm coming out in that.
Yeah, oh yeah.
We've got I'm Black Star in that. I'm very excited about.
What can you tell us about? Anything?
Nothing.
That
I'm in it.
Yeah, there you go.
They always get us with that one, Mike.
Yeah, I know.
I'm doing this, so tell us something. No.
One day we're going to get someone fired.
Yeah. We're
going to break our own rule.
They're always too smart for us.
Well, you see, it's like this. No.
Yeah.
The last episode.
But anyway, you were saying you like them all for different reasons.
Yeah, one of the funnest projects that I've ever done is our first movie together, Compound Fracture. It was amazing to have that control, the creativity, where we could do what we wanted to do. And, we woke up every morning, we'd get like 2 hours of sleep, but we'd be waking up going, we're making a movie,
Yeah.
It's just so exciting. And now we've done 2 movies and we're working on a TV series now. So,
What can you not tell us about the TV series?
It's an action.
All right.
It's about an ex-enforcer for a motorcycle gang. He's found a new life. He's gone straight, but he gets pulled in for one last job.
Oh, very, very exciting. I love it. You guys released, you mentioned the second movie, Penance Lane, was released this year. Tell us about that, and where can we find that?
Well, for both of them, if you want to find where you can watch them, you can go to the websites. One is penancelane.com.
Mm-hmm.
That is with one N, Penance. And the other is Compound Fracture, the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them have a Genius link on them, so you can just click it and see all.
That's awesome.
They're both streaming pretty wide. They're on Amazon and iTunes and the usual suspects. So originally we actually were going to produce Penance Lane first, but it's a bigger script, a lot more characters, a lot more locations. Mm-hmm. And we decided to go a little smaller first, a little more self-contained for our first one, just to make sure we didn't bite off more than we wanted to chew for the first one. So Compound Fracture, I called it a movie haiku. 10 characters, 1 location, go. It's a ghost story, really. And a family drama. It's about this kind of the cycle of abuse and what happens when, how we all internalize trauma throughout our lives, the things that get passed down, with a really nasty antagonist who's trying to kill the entire family. So that's Compound Fracture. Penance Lane is Crimson Matthews gets out of prison and takes a job as a handyman in this tiny little town. But the house that he's working in has some really nasty secrets hidden in its depths. And he has to fight his way out of the little town's deep, dark secret.
Oh, see, log lines on the spot are not easy, too. That is a skill.
I would call those small synopses.
Synopses, yes. Not easy to do. Not easy to do either. So, all right, real quick, each of you, if you could give me your most memorable either movie or convention experience that you can think of off the top of your head, spontaneous. Whoever wants to go first, Tyler.
My favorite movie of all time is Jaws.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. That's just my favorite movie. Convention experience. Wow, there's so many. I mean,
is there a standout one that maybe an interaction with fans, maybe something, I mean, maybe Renee's highlight was meeting you at the 2000 convention.
Yes, that is the most standout one right there.
Right.
Yeah.
So, guys, we are so thrilled that you guys were able to come on. We're gonna set aside some time in the coming weeks/months to do a one-on-one with both of you, so we can dive in deeper. I know, Renee, we got some cool stuff kind of going on as well too, that we can't talk about just yet, but we will very soon. I want to thank you. I want to thank you both for joining us.
Thanks for having
us.
Awesome. Thank you.
Good day.
All right. Take care.
Welcome back to the Rogue Wave podcast, talking comics, movies, TV, and pop culture every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern on Facebook.com/Rogue Wave Podcast without the E, or go to RogueWavePodcast.com, wave without the E, to subscribe on all major podcasting apps. We are part of the Rogue Matter Content Network, podcast network. Pretty excited about that. What does that mean? It means go to RogueMatter.com, enter your email, get a hidden code, and be one of the first people to check out the new digital content site, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. Can't even get into it, but we can at least announce that we're part of something larger. Want to thank our guests, Tyler and Renee. We succeeded, Hassan. We didn't break our rules. The marriage is still intact, and they didn't get fired.
That we know of.
That we know of, right. This is very true, actually. This is very true. So, hopefully. But
yes,
we'd like to have both on.
We do deeply hope. Yes, we do.
I mean, I kind of mentioned to them off camera too. There was just so much to get into. I wish that we could, get even deeper, but we can actually have them both on individually. I think we're gonna have Renee on another podcast that I'm doing as well too. It's gonna be, it's pretty exciting. We have not seen the last of them. They are friends of the Rogue Matter Podcast Network, so we'll be welcoming them even more in the coming weeks and months. All right, we are big fanboys of comic books and graphic novels. Every week we like to bring you the inside scoop on what's happening in the industry and with the source material that will make its way onto the large and small screen. We call this segment Spinning the Racks.
Spin the rack, spin that rack.
Wah. All right, DC Comics shrinks monthly line as Jim Lee addresses the bloodbath of layoffs. This is from Comics Beat. DC Comics is ending a number of their monthly titles, including Young Justice, Teen Titans, John Constantine Hellblazer, Hawkman, and Suicide Squad. The end of these series became known Friday in the November solicits, where the preview info was listed with the dreaded final issue stamp. This reduction in the monthly comics line comes amid news of massive layoffs, which was reported last week in all outlets. We covered that as well. As anxiety rose online, publisher Jim Lee, one of the few senior leaders to survive the cuts, spoke with The Hollywood Reporter in a conversation Friday that seemingly aimed at quelling concerns. We are still in the business of publishing comics, he assured, and went on to say, in the wake of the layoffs, DC would be reorganizing as well as reducing its line. This is from Comics Beat. If it feels like we've been here before, it's because we have. With previous layoffs and previous reductions in early 2019, that news saw similar assurances issued almost word for word in some cases. Lee also discussed the experienced editors staying with the company, a duo whose ascendance is a silver lining, Marie Javins and Michelle Wells. The pair will be serving as co-interim editors-in-chief, having previously headed up the digital strategy and YA publishing respectively. A new general manager position for DC Comics will go to a person whose identity has not yet been revealed, with the individual starting in September. Reporting on Comics Beat and others has suggested that person has prominent experience in e-sports. All right. Is this the end of comics as we know it? Again, I mean, is this the sounding alarm? I know you were deeply affected by the layoffs and how this doesn't really comfort the people, but having it say that it's not the end of DC Comics, but again, is this what's your take on this?
It's not the end of comics. Comics is going to go on. It's pretty much it might be the end of it's the end of the dominance, the dominance of two, the Marvel DC dominance over the industry. It's the end of there's been a lot of ebbs and flows in the comic book industry. There's been a lot of starts and stops, and everybody's always constantly talking about how it's teetering on the edge of complete annihilation or whatever. And obviously that has not proven to be the case. Right. However, this is probably the most public bloodletting that we've seen. Yeah. This purge is substantial. It's a big one. It's going also. It's coinciding with the news that that Valiant has closed its doors, that they're going to be a virtual office, that they're not going to have an actual tangible office anymore. So, and then there's rumors about the next one coming at Marvel, that there's going to be another bloodletting, or that the fall of DC will take Marvel down also, because as one goes, so goes the other. So, I mean, I think this is just the beginning. This is just the first few dominoes. Yeah, we have no idea where all the dominoes are going to fall. How far reaching it's all going to be. Go ahead. Sorry. I think it's going to be an interesting time for the publishers, for independents. Yeah. It's definitely going to exalt. It's going to elevate Kickstarters and Indiegogo, those kind of ventures. I think what's going to happen is a lot of creators who have been leaning on the industry for steady work are going to have to become more innovative. Now, the sad thing is that they're going to have to become more innovative to be able to make what they were making while we're steadily working with these giant companies. But the good thing is that they're going to have to become more innovative, right? And also, the doors will be open to them. There's not going to be a lot of stuff stopping it. It's going to be like the way television is right now, Netflix and the streaming services, because there is such a dearth of actual new material. Anything that comes out is going to get a decent amount of scrutiny. Right. It's going to get some attention. So, if you're fortunate to have a great idea and you're able to put some quality behind it, this might be your chance. The destruction,
this
quote
is
unquote
a sea change.
theoretical destruction of the industry might be an opportunity for a lot of people.
Yeah, this is a metamorphosis, not a destruction. This is a sea change, because this is something that, yes, I look, there is writing on the wall that more, that there's imminent changes, but graphic novel sales are up. It's just how people are consuming the comics. Retailers rely on the month to month. Publishers usually we're in a partnership with those retailers, so they would lean on the retailers and work with them. However, graphic novel sales are up, but not in comic book stores. Comic book stores are now, like, where they used to be like the number one area for revenue. I mean, they're number 3 or 4 now. We're doing a Kickstarter, which I mentioned earlier in the show. I'm doing another Kickstarter for Sire. I'm only when I do the Kickstarter for Sire later in the year, like, I'm just releasing volume 3. Like, I'm releasing the trade. If people want to do the single issues, I'll make that a reward package. But I'm not. There's the days of me doing a print run of 1,000 copies of a number 11. That's over. Like, that's over. I'll do on-demand printing for the people. But if 5 people pledge to back that single issue reward, I'll make 5 copies, but I'm not making more than that, because they don't sell, and it's not cost effective to do it anymore. This is, again, not the end of DC Comics, but it's the end, and not the end of comics, but it's the end of the direct market to retailers as we know it, right? And until comic book retailers, there's some amazing shops out there who've done this already, but until they realize that this is, look, they can be upset about this.
To clarify and be fair, we don't know that yet. It's signaling the end.
Yes.
It seems to signal the end, but we don't know if this is the end yet.
Right.
But yes, you're correct.
And again, just the end as we know it. Not the end of comics, not the end of DC. Batman's not going
maybe
away.
not even the end of not even the end as we know it. The end of what we know.
Right.
So, I mean, and that is what we make it. Right? That is either good or that is they're very bad.
Right.
So.
And like I said, I it sucks. Change is always difficult, but it's a constant. It's going to continue happening. It's something that, look, we even talked about it in the opening segment. We were just talking about riffing on comics, how the way comics are made, not for better or for worse. I'm not saying good or bad. They're different. They're just done differently now. You don't have the recaps in every issue, because it's not a single issue driven system anymore. It's a trade driven system. So even the solo issues do not give you any kind of continuity or editor's note to go check out this issue or check out that issue. To my dismay, but again, I'm not going to look at it as get off my lawn guy. I'm going to look at it as, okay, that's what it was. This is what it's going to be, because the technology is just different now, and things are just different. So.
Okay. Yeah. I can't argue with that. Argue with that.
That's our show for tonight.
Too bad, though.
I know. It does. Well, but you know what? You can go on Amazon and you can grab all those old issues, because they're still out there, and you can relive the glory days that were the 80s and 90s and complete your collection.
Yeah, but don't do that. Don't relive the 80s.
We want to thank our guests again, Tyler and Renae. Renae is heavily involved in some projects we're working on. Go check out roguematter.com. Be one of the first people to jump on the Rogue bandwagon. It's a new digital content site. It's going to be awesome. It's going to have comics and movies, and it's going to have podcasts like us. We're growing our podcast library as well, too. The Bad Coyote Funky Boys, who you guys know, they've moved over. They're Button Smash. You saw a commercial for it earlier in the show, or listen to it if you're listening on podcast. A lot of exciting things. We didn't just change the name just for the sake of changing the name. We got a lot of things connected with the new home for the Rogue Wave podcast. All right, next week, DC Fandom. We will give you our takes on all the announcements sure to come. Maybe they'll show the Snyder Cut there, right? It exists.
We'll see. We can only wonder.
Yeah,
until next week.
I don't think it does. I don't think it does. We will see you next week. Rogue Wave.